Well, I was heading down after we had learned of it about 9 o'clock or 8:55 this morning. I had called in to see if we should go down and aid the coverage, and I was on my way down. And we got fairly close to the building, and I ran into a cameraman from MSNBC, and we were trying to get across town past the World Trade Center to the West Side Highway, which is on the lower southwestern corner of Manhattan, to hook up with our colleagues from CNBC. And as we were going across one of the restricted zones, the building started to explode, I guess is the only way I could describe it. It was hard to tell if it was an actual explosion, but the building began to come down, and we ran, and I sprinted around a corner. John headed straight down the street, and it began to look like a scene out of Independence Day, with just blackness raining down everywhere. And as I cut around the corner, I ducked behind a car. And it got darker and darker. I got inside what was just a parked car and stayed there for several minutes. And the material continued to rain down, and it was literally pitch black, darker than night, for several minutes.
That sound and those pictures still so vivid 20 years later, and that was what Ron Insana described he had just witnessed on the morning of September 11th, 2001. And as the 20-year anniversary of 9/11 approaches, we are looking back and remembering as a way to honor those we lost. And with us now is Ron Insana. He's currently a CNBC senior analyst and commentator, as well as a senior advisor to Schroders North America. Welcome back, Ron. Good to see you.
Thanks,
and thanks for joining in this remembrance of a day that none of us can ever forget. As you were running there, I just want to pick up on a couple of things. What did you feel? Did you feel the concussive effect of the building coming down? What did you smell? What did you taste? What was the experience like?
Well, it really was. I mean, it was surreal is the only word that we used at the time, and still the only word I can summon up. A huge chunk of the top of the building fell off. An enormous plume of smoke blew out, which I didn't fully mention in that original retelling. And almost immediately, as John Zito, who was actually a producer at MSNBC, and I were running away from the building, knowing that whatever was happening wasn't good, I made a right-hand turn around a corner. He kept running straight down the street, and I looked over my shoulder, and I saw the cloud begin to roll out. And I saw it catch him, and I ran around that car as I described and squatted down for a period of time. And it literally was pitch black. And the smell, Tyler, as you know and may recall from having been down in the area, of an electrical fire. It was very strange combinations of smells that will never leave. The sound was overwhelming. And in fact, it's the one thing I sincerely don't remember. It was so loud. It was so incredibly loud that it's just something I still can't recall. And the blackness was truly darker than night. And what you tasted was the remnants of that building. I mean, for an hour or so after, we were still, many of us who were down there, were still coughing that stuff up. And sadly, for those who spent too much time down there, they were stricken with illnesses if they weren't, killed immediately underneath the rubble of the building. And it's, in many ways, it's still indescribable. I think when I talked about it looking like a scene out of Independence Day or a nuclear winter, which is another way I referenced at the time, at least from a common parlance, that's exactly what it looked, felt, and smelled like.
What did you do next? How did you get from where you were downtown to where you broadcast from, which was Midtown?
Yeah, it was a very strange thing. So as I said, I kind of hid myself in what was at the time an unlocked parked car about a half block from the towers. And when it cleared up enough, I went into a building that was populated with some individuals. I still don't know which building it was, and some police officers. And they decided that they were going to move uptown. And I got into a car with them. We picked up some people who were injured, dropped them off at Midtown. And then I walked over to 30 Rockefeller Center, which is NBC's headquarters. Jack Welch, who had just retired and was just pitching his first book on the Today Show, was on his way out. Obviously, with the programming changes, he was heading out the door. I told him what had happened. He gave me a hug. I walked up to see Andy Lack, who at the time was the president of NBC News, and he just said, "Get on the set." And Tom Brokaw, Katie Couric, and Matt Lauer were on, and they just parked me down next to them to recount what I had seen and experienced down on Wall Street.
How has it affected you that day?
I'll tell you, this year's been a little harder when I think about it. I've gone through some years where I've really just kind of avoided the coverage altogether. I think there's still a profound sense of loss, of sadness. It doesn't come to me as often as it did in I would say the first 3 years. I did not go across the George Washington Bridge without once thinking about what had transpired that day. On the 20-year anniversary, I do feel a little more emotional about it. And I do, we lost friends, all of us in our business, knew people who were in that building. We lost some colleagues along the way, whether in the Iraq War or in Afghanistan. And, I still think it's has such a profound impact on our psyche. I wish it had permanently unified the country, which is something that it only did really at the end of the day for a matter of months.
Ron Insana, a day we'll never forget, a day that changed the world and how we live in it. Ron Insana, thanks very much.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.